Something moved under the black water. Nobody saw its body. Nobody heard it breathe. But the boat rocked and the river went silent. For hundreds of years, science believed it knew the biggest snake in the Amazon. Then in 2024, scientists confirmed something disturbing. They had missed one, a giant anaconda hiding in plain sight for centuries. And now the question is not, was science wrong? The question is, what else is still under the black water? This is not just a monster story. This is about one of the darkest river systems on Earth. A place so large, so dense, and so unexplored, that entire species can live there without ever entering the scientific record. It is about ancient people who warned outsiders long before researchers arrived. It is about science catching up to stories that were never just stories. And it is about a river where the surface tells you nothing. From above, the Amazon looks peaceful. A green ocean of trees. Long rivers cutting through the forest. Beautiful, remote, almost calm. But from the riverbank, everything changes. The sunlight disappears. The canopy closes above you. The air becomes wet and heavy. The forest gets quiet in a way that feels unnatural, and the water turns black, not dirty black. The color comes from leaves, bark, roots, and forest matter breaking down for thousands of years. The river becomes stained like black tea. In some places you cannot see even 1 inch below the surface. That means anything inside that water is invisible. A fish can pass under your foot. A caiman can float beside your canoe. A snake can move below the boat and leave no shadow. You are not looking into the Amazon. You are standing beside a wall, a moving wall, a breathing wall. A wall that can hide anything, and that is exactly why something enormous could move there. Without ever being seen, for generations, people who lived beside these rivers understood something outsiders did not. They did not treat the water as empty. They treated it as occupied. Before entering certain rivers, some communities made sound. They struck boats. They used shells. They created vibrations. Not as a performance, not for drama, but as a warning, a way of saying, "We are here. We mean no harm. Move away." To an outsider, that might sound like superstition. But snakes do not hear the world the way we do. They feel it. Through the water, through the water, through vibration. A large snake resting near a riverbank can feel movement long before it sees anything. So when people announce themselves through sound, they are not talking to a myth. They are using the language of the river. And here is where the story becomes uncomfortable. Modern researchers also use vibration. They hit boats. They make low sounds. They disturb the water before approaching. Because large snakes often move away from vibration. Ancient knowledge and modern field practice began to look strangely similar. But the snake described in Amazon stories was not always the anaconda science already knew. Local accounts spoke of something darker, larger, heavier, something that could disturb the riverbank when it moved. Something treated less like an animal and more like the owner of the water. Different peoples had different names for it. One of the most famous is Yakumama, often translated as the mother of water. But this video is not here to say Yakumama is proven. It is not. No scientist has confirmed a living monster snake from those legends. But that is not the most interesting part. The most interesting part is this. Science has already missed a giant Amazon snake before. In 2024, researchers confirmed the northern green anaconda, a giant snake that looked so similar to the known green anaconda that for generations it was treated as the same animal, but genetically it was not the same. It was a separate species, a giant predator living in the Amazon, hidden in plain sight, and who helped lead researchers to it. People who lived with the river, people who knew where to look, people whose knowledge had been there long before the lab results. This is the first big twist. science did not discover the Amazon from the outside. Much of the time, science confirms what river people already knew. So ask yourself this: if science missed one giant anaconda for more than 250 years, what else could it still be missing? And to understand how large a snake can really get, we have to go back 60 million years, long before humans. Long before the Amazon looked the way it does today, South America was hotter, wetter, denser. It was a world of warm swamps, giant reptiles, and rivers filled with predators, and in that world lived Titanobo, the largest snake ever found in the fossil record, longer than a school bus, thick enough to make modern snakes look small, a predator built by heat, water, and time. Titanoboa does not prove a monster snake exists today. That would be a false claim. But Titanoboa proves something important. Under the right conditions, snakes can become enormous. Hotter climate, warmer wetlands, more food. Bigger reptiles, that is the simple pattern. And the ancient Amazon once had those conditions. Then the world cooled, habitats changed, giant reptiles disappeared. The age of Titanoboa ended, at least. That is the official story. But here is the strange part. Some parts of the Amazon may still hold unusual heat. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, there is a river known for extreme heat. The boiling river. For years, many people outside the region doubted it. A hot river in the Amazon, far from active volcanoes, sounded impossible, geologically wrong. Like a legend, the then scientists went there, and the river was real. In some areas, the water becomes dangerously hot. Hot enough to injure, hot enough to kill small animals that fall in. Not magic, not a dragon under the earth. Geothermal heat, water moving deep underground. Warming, then rising back to the surface. Again, the pattern repeats. First dismissed, then investigated, then confirmed. Now be careful. This does not mean giant snakes live in the boiling river. They would not survive in the hottest sections. But around unusual geothermal systems, there can be warmer tributaries, hidden channels, stable pockets of heat, places that remain different from the forest around them. And reptiles respond to warmth. Warmth changes movement, feeding, growth, survival. So if you wanted to imagine the kind of place where an unusually large snake could remain hidden, you would not look in open water. You would look in dark water, warm water, remote water. Water under closed forest where humans rarely go. And the Amazon still has places like that. Rivers under thick canopy, black water tributaries. Channels that flood and vanish with the seasons. Places where boats cannot easily pass. Places where a camera sees nothing, because the water itself refuses to show you. This is why the mystery survives. Not because we have proof of a monster, but because we do not have enough proof to close the case. The Amazon is not a zoo. It does not show us everything. It hides life in layers, canopy, mud, distance. And every time humans think the map is finished, the forest reminds us we were only looking at the easy parts. But there is another side to this story, and it is darker than the snake. The Amazon is changing. Roads cut into forest, fires open the canopy, dams alter rivers, logging removes shade, and communities that carried river knowledge for generations are pushed away from the places they understood best. Hidden blackwater systems depend on balance, shade, temperature, isolation, food chains, silence. When the forest opens, the water changes. When the water changes, the animals change. And when the people who know the river are forced away, the memory of how to live beside it disappears too. So maybe the tragedy is not just that we may never find the creature. Maybe the tragedy is something ancient could vanish before science even gives it a name. Think about that. A species can live for thousands of years, maybe millions, survive, flood, drought, predators, climate shifts, and still disappear in one human lifetime because the place that protected it was cut open. That is what makes the Amazon frightening. Not just what might be hiding there, but how fast the hiding places are disappearing. So let's return to the beginning. Black water, no visibility, no sound, a boat drifting slowly, a ripple that should not be there. A shape below the surface, too large to be a fish, too smooth to be a log, too silent to explain. Maybe it is nothing, maybe it is only current. Maybe every story is just a story. But then again, science once missed a giant anaconda. Scientists once doubted rivers that turned out to be real. And fossils proved that the Amazon once produced snakes larger than anything alive today. So the honest answer is not impossible. The honest answer is we do not know yet. And sometimes, that is the most terrifying answer of all. Because the surface tells you nothing, the silence tells you nothing. And somewhere in the Amazon, in a river no camera has clearly seen through, something ancient may still be moving, not hiding, not waiting, not trying to become a legend, just living there. As it always has, before roads, before maps, before science had a name for it, before humans had a word for impossible. If you want to know about another animal science said was gone forever, until it appeared alive, watch this next, because sometimes the world does not hide its monsters. It simply waits for us to look in the right place.